I'm calling the May 22nd, 2023 Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board members Beatty, I show excused tonight. Board member Duggar, excused. Board member Hartmeyer Prigg.
Here.
Board member Hessen. Excused.
She's excused too.
Board member Roy Kim. Has he joined yet? I can't see on my screen. I don't show him on yet. We'll wait a minute. Board member Edward Kimmy.
Here.
Board member Teeter.
I'm here.
Board member Tivnon.
Here.
Board member Olven.
Here.
Board member Vitko.
Here.
And board member Walton.
Here.
And while I was on there, did Roy Kim join? I see him joining. I will mark him present.
Great, thank you so much. And before we kick things off, I just want to note that this is a watershed moment in the history of BURA. Cheryl Tweedy has served as the kind of visionary and the leader and our director for, I believe, 11 years since the inception of BURA. 8 years?
Only 9. I just had my 9th anniversary.
Great. Well, we'll save all of our thank yous until the end of the meeting, but I wanted to note that at the front end, so I can be mulling that over, but we'll leave time at the end if anyone wants to say anything, of course, to you too, Cheryl. But then moving into our first agenda item, we have visitor comments. City Recorder, do we have anyone here to address BURA?
We do not.
Okay, then we will move on to board communications. Does any board member have any communications that they wish to share this evening? And hearing none. Okay, we'll move on to business. Let's see here. Do we have any minutes to consider this evening for the BURA board?
There are draft of minutes for December 13th, 2022.
Yes. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes for the BURA meeting of December 13th of 2022.
Excellent. Do we have a second?
This is an SL second.
Great. First and a second. Do we have any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Recorder, will you please call the roll?
Board members Hartmeyer Prigg.
Yes.
Roy Kim. Roy Kim.
Yes.
Edward Kimmy.
Yes.
Teeter.
Abstain.
Tivnon.
Yes.
Olven.
Yes.
Vitko.
Yes.
Walton.
Yeah.
Did you say no?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, okay, yes. Marking yes, Walton. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the rest of tonight's business, we have BURA Bill 2023-49, BURA Portfolio Redevelopment Strategy Update. Janine, please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much, Chair Tivnon. Janine Lambert, Senior Development Project Manager in Community Development. And tonight I'm here just to introduce Alex Joyce, who is from Cascadia Partners and will be giving the presentation tonight on BURA's Portfolio Redevelopment Strategy. Alex, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Good to be with you tonight. Good to have a little bit of extra time tonight with you to go through this draft development strategy and all the good work that's gone into it since January. I'm going to dive right in. We have a lot to get through. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to thumb through the presentation materials because I'm going to skim over a good portion of some of the background information here just in the interest of time and the interest of keeping the conversation focused on the forward-looking goals and vision and strategies portion. But we wanted to lay a solid foundation and make sure that we're orienting you to a lot of the the work that has and the engagement that's gone into this process, but also the fact that the strategy is rooted in a lot of past planning and engagement that's happened as well. So we wanted to draw that line for you in this presentation, and it will be reflected in the strategy document itself as well. We're going to cover the meat of the presentation will be the redevelopment goals and objectives, the site visions, and the redevelopment strategies themselves. At the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to take clarifying questions along the way, but during the discussion that I hope to have, we want to focus in on a few key questions for this group. So we want to make sure we cover whether or not the goals seem to capture all of the right priorities. There's pretty specific goals and outcomes. Whether or not the site visions themselves are meeting these priorities, and then what additional detail you might need in preparation for taking action on the strategy in the July meeting. I'll revisit these questions at the end. So just as a reminder, in our last time together, I went over what really the purpose of this project is, which is to define a flexible but also actionable strategy. The strategy has to remain viable and actionable over a number of years, as we'll talk about. And so that requires a certain amount of flexibility. The market a year from now is not going to be the same as the market today. A lot of the priorities have lived on in much of the engagement and planning work that started many years ago. So a lot of the objectives will remain fresh and are sharpened for this and talked about in terms of how they can manifest through real estate. This is like any strategy. The strategy is really a balance of understanding what the community desires are, what their needs are, and also what are the market realities and the market opportunities on these sites, and balancing those two things in a way that can make these projects happen. So as a reminder, there's five properties in the portfolio that we're looking at for this strategy that we've been assembled over a number of years, and this represents a really pretty major opportunity to transform several different sub areas within the downtown area. This work stands on the shoulder of a lot of really great planning work that has shaped the broader city, but also the downtown over the years. And as you'll see, a lot of the transportation and downtown economic development goals are reflected in the strategy here, but they're rooted in past planning efforts. We also, as part of this project, considered BRA's goals and objectives more broadly, and we'll talk about the engagement that's done here. Arts and cultural, you'll see represented, transportation improvements through redevelopment of these sites, housing, support for business. All these objectives you'll see they're reflected in the strategy. Recently completed downtown equity strategy provided us with some very recent insights into community engagement, and also our project consulted had a BIPOC listening session that focused on getting feedback on real estate related equity concerns as well. So a real focus on equity throughout the entire redevelopment process for this strategy. We also wanted to understand nuts and bolts how equity can be reflected in real estate and through the actions of an urban renewal agency, and at what stages of the development process equity can be considered and how it can be considered. So all the way from the design and the construction through the operations of the building, equity can be considered in different ways. Try to incorporate that through the strategy. Since the beginning of the project in January, we've come a long way. We've had a couple of months of learning, listening, and engaging. And we've tested out some ideas as a group. We've tested out ideas with different stakeholders in the community, and we'll talk about some of the engagement. We've started to write up the strategy itself, some overarching strategies for the portfolio, overarching goals, as well as site-specific visions and some strategy considerations for each of the site. We'll go over those in the most detail tonight. This is all aiming at a July, hopefully a July adoption of the strategy, so that the actions can get underway and we can start seeing some of the results shape the downtown here in the near future. Specific to engagement, we've had several touch points with specific stakeholders and the broader community. Early on, we conducted a series of developer interviews, and we had a BIPOC listening session to solicit specific stakeholder input. Staff also did outreach with various boards, committees, and task forces. And then there was an online open house where we solicited input and had a public survey that was available and advertised to solicit broader public input. A couple of key highlights from the BIPOC focus group specifically, there was a real emphasis on making sure that the downtown provided business incubation space, provided spaces that could allow folks to get on the economic ladder and the ladder of opportunity, also provided activity and family-friendly experiences even at night. So not just a daytime gathering place, but a nighttime gathering place. Support for working families, and that includes things like childcare and support being integrated into the downtown area, access to workforce training and services within new buildings that can provide folks with necessary skills, skill building and job training. And then obviously certain types of affordable housing and making sure that downtown is accessible for living as well as working. So larger 2-bedroom units, multi-generational living, really responding to the specific needs of the cultural diversity in Beaverton. And we also did some broader community engagement that identified themes that you'll see reflected in the strategy. So this is just an example of some key themes that came out of engagement around the BC2 site. So connectivity, safety, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. What about Beaverton, Beaver Dam West, the Beaver Dam West site, permanent night market, car-free Beaver Dam Road, housing density. So some of these themes that we've gathered from the broader community as well, you'll see reflected in the strategy. Lombard West, affordable housing is a strong favorite, as well as green space and opportunities for family housing. The developer interviews, which we touched on briefly the last time I was with you all, but it's worth repeating a couple things. You know, the broader regional development community is really bullish on Beaverton. You all have cultivated a very business-friendly identity that's welcoming to investment, especially in the downtown. And Beaverton is viewed as a really well-positioned alternative to investing in Portland, Multnomah County right now. A couple of things where was identified by the development community as areas to lean into, and you'll see some of these things reflected in the strategy, was that the downtown's currently really defined by fast-moving, busy highways. The experience of a lot of people is defined by those highways. And you know, the downtown identity is sort of hard to put your finger on. So some placemaking opportunities there would really go a long way. And then, you know, going big on a major green space can have a real broader economic development impact. So thinking about how to invest and go even further on the creek improvements, for instance, to create major areas of gathering. We also looked at the current market. So what are the opportunities in the current market? The urban renewal is not limited to what the market can do. In fact, one of the key roles of urban renewal is to try and nudge the market along, to create just market comparables that can help the market do these things on its own, but also to assist the market in delivering on a range of community benefits that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. But in order to understand what the market, you know, what aspects of the market you can leverage and how to efficiently deploy public investments, it's important to understand where the market is, where the challenges are, where the opportunities are. So we did a deep dive into the current state of residential in a variety of different forms, retail, office, and hotel. And the long story short is, you know, when we looked at comparing downtown Beaverton to Beaverton as a whole, and then downtown Beaverton to other downtowns in the region, there's some interesting findings for multifamily, for residential rental. Downtown Beaverton has really come a long way, and has the gap between the rent in downtown Beaverton and Portland has really been cut in half. And so it's a very desirable place to live. And there's a lot of market opportunity for multifamily. When we look at retail, there's been a real success story when it comes to retail in downtown Beaverton, particularly in food and beverage. And so retail rents are strong. and vacancies are low. And so there's a real opportunity to push the market further to create even more unique ground floor experiences, even more unique retail and commercial experiences without a whole lot of public investment. Office, not just in Beaverton, but in a lot of places, has had some recent challenges with COVID and work from home and the slow return to the office. There's not a lot of financing activity and development activity around office. But one of the priorities, long-time priorities of a complete downtown for Beaverton is to get some major employment areas. So we looked at a variety of different strategies for how you could feasibly incorporate a major employment opportunity into downtown, despite these headwinds. In hotel, the vacancy rates have rebounded, or the average, the occupancy rates have rebounded in Beaverton faster than a lot of parts of the region. The average daily rates still lag behind some other parts. So there may be an opportunity here. There's clearly a demand, but there may be an opportunity to go a little bit higher end if that is desired. So the reason why we look at the current state of the market is to really understand how far apart, or what is the opportunity to leverage the current market strength to achieve community benefits, or the other way to look at that is how much public investment is going to be needed to achieve some of these uses if they're not as strong. And particularly when you're layering on community benefits, that can impact the underlying market realities and financial realities of a project. And so as we look across these different use types, they're not all created equal. Some of them have been proven in the market already, but some have not. Some of the goals that we're trying to achieve in the strategy that we've heard from the community are more market supportable, and some are really not. They require a larger amount of public investment. So what is the gap? So when we talk about, for residential, affordable housing, mixed income, family size, senior housing, or different product or different construction typologies, high rise, mass timber, modular, there's a big gap there when we're trying to deliver affordable housing or different technologies that are newer to the market. Retail, we talked about, is very strong. Opportunities for small local startup businesses could be less of a lift in terms of the public investment needed. Office is challenging right now for a variety of reasons, as we talked about. And so achieving traditional Class A office is going to be more challenging. It's going to require some more investment of upfront time and testing the market from the city to achieve. Hotel, there's an opportunity. There's some hotel activity has been proven in the market, but not all the different types of hotel and accommodation have been proven yet. And so there's probably a bit of a gap there. So not all these uses are primed for efficient delivery in the market and may require some additional public investment, and particularly as you lean in on the goal. So adding more community benefits really is going to require some additional public investment. So as we reflect on the engagement that we've had and all of the different ambitions and needs that have been brought forward in the stakeholder engagement and the broader community engagement, the questions that we are trying to answer for the strategy are really fivefold. So who benefits, who should benefit from the redevelopment, but also, are there any unintended consequences? Are there any impacts from redevelopment that we should be considering and preparing for? What uses need to be prioritized, right? What uses should be more of a focus for Bureau? What uses may have less market traction and may need more nudging or support? So why should we invest in certain uses or outcomes more? Where are the most strategic sites for certain goals? Certain goals, certain uses are going to be more attracted to certain sites or less attracted to certain sites. So how do we pair certain goals and uses with the sites where they're going to be most feasible? And then when are the first moves? What should go first? What should go second? What should go third? And so on. And we're going to try and unpack some of these things. So the goals and objectives. So as we reflected on all of the input and the engagement that we've received thus far, several themes emerged. Broadly speaking, the emphasis on a vibrant downtown, a downtown that attracts people and as a place that's safe and welcoming and as a place where people want to go. And there's a set of ingredients that really define a downtown, and you'll see all of these ingredients touched on in the strategy, but it's really successful downtowns, healthy downtowns are really defined by public spaces that are high quality, that are surrounded by and supported by ground floor commercial uses, a wide variety of housing and other employment uses. And this helps to create a defined and distinctive identity. So a couple of strategies emerge, a couple of outcomes emerge. Continue to add housing that's at a density that supports a lot of vibrant street level commercial activity. It's mixed income. And then adding significant employment opportunities. So is there an opportunity to think about how to add more daytime employment into the downtown area? So there's a good mix of housing and employment. And an attention to a high quality street environment. So this can, so that all of the commercial tenants can be supported by one another in a vibrant and safe street level. So all three of those elements are really important to a vibrant downtown. And also thinking about how to be more of a 16, 18-hour downtown, not just a downtown that's vibrant during the day and sleepy at night. So thinking about nighttime activity as well as daytime. And really that's going to revolve around a really healthy set of businesses and programming that attracts energy day and night, both local and tourists alike. And that comes down to encouraging unique ground floor experiences that are both inviting to customers, but also attainable from a price point for tenants. Focusing that activity on key corners and frontages. Retail can't go everywhere. It doesn't like to be on its own. It likes to be clustered with other things. So really being intentional about the key frontages and streets and corners that we want to cluster activity on. And integrate commercial, the arts, and culture all together into spaces that surround new gathering places. So having an integrated program that merges public gathering places with opportunities for cultural and arts expression as well as commercial activity. And then programming as well. Vibrant activities, events, special events, those don't happen by accident. They have to be intentionally programmed. So working to help coordinate those permanent spaces through tenanting, but also the more pop-up and weekend activities as well, including potentially a night market. The goal of inclusive and affordable downtown. So, downtowns can be and have been historically a source of economic prosperity and access to opportunity. And the redevelopment of these significant properties should continue to broaden access to these opportunities. So that includes providing, attainable housing opportunities for the broad range of families and incomes in Beaverton, but also prioritizing attainable commercial spaces. So a variety of sizes and formats, spaces big and small, permanent traditional retail spaces, as well as flexible pop-up spaces and multi-tenant market halls that can allow, even small entrepreneurs to get a foothold in the downtown. And where possible, work with development partners to prioritize the inclusion of small, local, and BIPOC tenants in these new commercial spaces. Accessible. So we heard a lot about the transportation towns in downtown, and we thought a lot about how the redevelopment of this very substantial amount of acreage, which is equivalent to 8 downtown Portland blocks. If you think about, that's quite a transformative amount of real estate. Not only is it a large amount of real estate, but it's a real opportunity to redefine the entire pedestrian realm in big parts of downtown. And this includes reimagining what the streetscape could be, thinking about wider sidewalks and tree canopy, and the right amount of active ground floor uses and a curated program of tenants to create a real wonderful experience for visitors. Adding new streets, right? So these are large. Several of these properties are very large and could add additional north, south, east, west connections. to improve the ease with which pedestrians can get from one side of downtown to another. Really thinking about how to leverage two major regional transit and rail transit stops. How do we think about what is the right TOD for Beaverton, and how do we push the envelope on regional TOD in downtown Beaverton? Creating and activating new community gathering places in a variety of different forms. So little pocket playgrounds, plazas that are central, to a portion of the property, as well as interior courtyards that serve, the residents and families that live in the building. So thinking carefully about the spaces that are created can really transform the broader downtown. Family friendly and multi-generational. Beaverton is a family friendly community, and so should downtown be. The design of public streets, the buildings, the ground floor experience, the public spaces, they should all really center the experience of the young and the old. And if you can make it accessible and friendly and safe for the young and the old, then everyone else can thrive as well. So adding new gathering places that allow for cultural expression, play, and art is going to be critical to making downtown also family friendly. It's also going to take a little bit of work to understand the unique needs of working families, multi-generational families, culturally specific types of housing need, unpack that a little bit more so it can be brought into this redevelopment process. And then folding in the supportive uses for working families and seeking out opportunities to include those in the ground floor or beyond at some of these buildings. So childcare, workforce training, education, these are really critical. And really thinking about Beaverton's cultural diversity as an asset that can be incorporated into all aspects of the redevelopment of these properties, from the tenanting of the ground floor experience to the design elements included in the public spaces, the programming, the uses of public spaces for cultural expression, the leveraging of partnerships, so arts and cultural organizations, and trying to seek out ways for them to expand or find new homes in Beaverton. There's a variety of ways to create a rich arts and culture experience downtown. And we talked about this early on, but equity and considering equity at every step of the redevelopment process has been central to this from the beginning. And that includes thinking about, how we engage, who's at the table, how decisions are being made all throughout the development process, from planning to the partnerships that Bureau tries to secure in the design process itself, who's owning different aspects of the property, and then in the operations, what are the tenants, the mix of tenants, and who's benefiting. So seeking out ways in real estate for wealth building can come in the form of development partnerships, but also in the tenanting as well. Committing to and investing in long-term relationships. So that's something that comes up again and again in these types of processes, is that the trust comes from an investment in long-term relationships and having those conversations over a long period of time. And then continuing, as we've done, to conduct a transparent, inclusive process. So being upfront about what is possible, but also what is going to be a challenge, and being honest. So incorporating green elements of sustainability, this is has merits in and of itself, but it also can be a real economic driver. And if done right, it can improve the quality of life of downtown, not only in terms of the street environment, but the energy performance of buildings. That doesn't happen just because people like it. It happens if different requirements like LEED or other certifications are required. In the public realm, there can be really beautiful, functional, fun, and engaging places that also serve a purpose. It's called green infrastructure. So thinking about how to merge, the traditional infrastructure with the infrastructure that supports people enjoying the space. Thinking about going big on district-wide creek improvements. So how can the creek as a central organizing element, which has been long identified as a major potential opportunity in the downtown, how can that serve multiple different purposes for play, for gathering, for green infrastructure, for habitat? And then prioritizing different modes of travel. So leveraging opportunities for additional transit usage, walking and biking. So those goals are intended to capture all the feedback that we've received and all of the ideas that have been built on from previous planning efforts, and set us on a path to understand how we can achieve these things across the entire portfolio. So I want to talk a little bit about the development strategy and how it's in service of achieving those goals. So we've identified a couple of key overall development strategies that apply to all of the sites. Importantly, as we'll talk about, there's an element of setting the table. So there's been a lot of work that Bureau and Bureau staff have engaged in. We've identified for each of the sites and portfolio-wide some additional steps we'd recommend just to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and setting yourself up for success for the development, but also for properties that may take a little longer to redevelop, thinking through interim use strategies so the properties are not sitting there in an unused fashion and can actually be, additive to the experience of downtown rather than just in a holding pattern. And a very important element of the development strategy is proper marketing, preparing a development offering that's specific to each site, each opportunity, doing a proactive marketing campaign, investing time in pre-marketing the site to potential tenants to take some of the guesswork out for as much as possible for the development partners that may be interested in developing. Burra can play a very practical role in that. Partnering, finding the right partner is probably the single biggest and most important decision for any of these. So thoroughly vetting potential development partners who submit proposals, negotiating a very well thought through development agreement with the selected development partner that establishes clear vision, goals, but also concrete commitments and expectations so that the project moves along at a pace. Being ready to invest. There's each of these sites has complexities about the site itself or a set of desired community benefits that will likely take some public investment. And so being ready to invest to make these things happen, both in terms of time and money. And then being a partner through the design and the construction to make sure that, you are a co-investor in these outcomes and that you're doing everything you can do as an organization to move them along, but also to keep the community benefits always at the table and always front and center. So as we've thought about the goals and the strategies and the market and consider those things, we've put forward a proposal to move 2 properties to a development offering process as soon as this year. That would include the Lombard West property and the Broadway East property through 2 separate development offerings. We'll get into a little bit of the rationale there, but just to lay out the sequencing. And then in the second stage would be second round would be a joint RFQ for the BC2 and Beaver Dam West site. We'll talk a little bit about the thinking around a joint RFQ there. So a joint development offering. And then round 3 would be the Buffet site. We'll talk a little bit about the considerations on that. So for round 1, we propose moving ahead with 2 sites independently, offering them both out to solicit interest from development partners. And there's a variety of opportunities that are driving our thinking here. So for the Lombard West site, there's some near-term planning efforts around Milliken Way that may need some additional affordable units as part of that process. The site itself is largely ready. The transit, the streets, the trail are in place. And then, with the state turning up the focus on housing and affordable housing, there's some new and expanded funding opportunities that should be considered. The only trade-off associated with that is that there's probably less time if we move quickly on Lombard West to curate a major non-residential user. So doing the care and feeding and nurturing the relationships with not tenants that don't have a development core business mission, like educational, civic, or cultural users. It takes time and it takes attention. So that may be one of the trade-offs. Moving faster to capitalize on some of these opportunities may mean you have less time for that. Broadway East is a smaller, lower risk project. It's going to have a smaller dollar amount. The surrounding market is really strong. And it's a real opportunity to realize some of the equity goals now to try and secure an emerging BIPOC developer to tackle that particular site. And we don't really see any trade-offs for moving quickly with that one. On round two, that's a combined development offering BC2 and Beaver Dam West. The reason why it's not round one, even though we'll talk about it, probably has one of the most significant, or has the most significant catalytic potential, is that there's still some pre-development activity that we're recommending, some actions, some setting of the table actions that we're recommending to complete prior to release. One of those is to test the office market. If office or a major employment component is a key ingredient for that redevelopment, it would help to improve the interest in the site if BIRA could invest some time to better understand the depth and health of the local office demand. We don't see any trade-offs in waiting. One reason for that is that interest rates are currently pretty high, and waiting 12 months could potentially reduce those and increase office demand in the process. So the Buffet site is in round three. This site's been identified as a potential site for major art, civic, cultural organization, and taking a little bit of extra time on that allows for the nurturing of those relationships and helping to kind of support those organizations through somewhat of an unfamiliar process. So that recommendation for round three, though, comes with a trade-off, which is a slower process might delay the redevelopment of the site. So there may be a need for a more of an interim use strategy there. It also could result in a different set of federal wetland rules that have to be abided by. So there are some real trade-offs in waiting on that particular site. But the opportunity to secure a major cultural anchor could be worth it. A couple of other considerations: catalytic impact. So what is the impact to adjacent properties of these redevelopments? It can be quite significant depending upon the scale and magnetism of the redevelopment itself. So what's happening and what kind of new energy is being brought through the redevelopment of the property itself, but also what are the adjacent properties in the context of the sites? And are there a lot of underutilized sites nearby, or are there relatively few? So that those two ingredients work together to really create to measure the impact of the catalyst of the investment. So you can see here the Beaver Dam and Beaver Dam West and BC2 site combined represent a tremendous amount of catalytic impact. There's a lot of underutilized properties surrounding them today that could be redeveloped as a result of changing market dynamics through the redevelopment of these sites. The Lombard has the potential to maybe get one or two properties to reconsider in the immediate vicinity, as the immediate surroundings are more stable housing types. So its potential catalytic impact is sort of related to a couple of key properties, but only a couple. The Broadway East site could define a new, smaller mixed-use product type that could, replicate itself throughout the downtown area. But it's in an area of, already kind of hot market area, particularly for ground floor retail. The Buffet site, I think, has the potential to redefine a submarket within the broader downtown area and have some ripple effects. So this is one consideration. The other consideration is, of course, tax increment financing and the ability to invest in these kinds of public benefits revolves around tax generation for BURA, and the consideration that commercial uses generate and are taxed at twice the rate as multifamily, for instance. So considering how to get some more commercial activity moving sooner could have some benefits. Two other considerations, and then we'll move into the sites. So any development project, even though the best circumstances, can get derailed for so many different reasons. But these sort of complex projects that have layered community benefits, they're particularly fragile. And so it's just worthwhile acknowledging that it's going to require attention and a true partnership on the part of Bureau staff and these development partners, community-based organizations, whoever is trying to be is part of the redevelopment teams and the partnerships that are struck. So there's a few pre-development actions that we identified for all of the sites. We've identified a few for each of the sites, which I will just acknowledge when we get to that point, and you can, anyone's welcome to ask questions about them. But at a high level, we think it's would be really advantageous and helpful to do another round of and keep lines of communication open with adjacent property owners. A coordinated planning or a joint development with adjacent property owners could further leverage the redevelopment of the current portfolio even further. So another round of outreach prior to releasing any of these RFQs would be helpful. A couple of more defined edges. So a few of the sites have constraints or encumbrances that should be very clearly defined to understand and communicate the true developable area of each of these sites. So certainty is really important to get people's attention in the development community and in the community at large. And so trying to define the edges of the buildable areas is really important. We mentioned testing the market for certain uses like office. So trying to get a jump on the market analysis that will have to be conducted by any of these development partners will really help to allay any concerns that they may have about the depth and strength of certain uses. And then gaining a more clear understanding of the housing needs of specific members of the community or specific cultural groups in the community. So getting a deeper understanding of what are the culturally specific housing needs? What does a family size unit mean for residents of Beaverton? What are the specific needs for seniors, et cetera? And then make sure you pick the right tool for the job. So I think probably everyone has heard the terms RFP, RFQ, RFEI is another one, request for proposal, request for qualifications. There's a variety of development offering approaches. Long story short, some of these are more prescriptive in terms of the parameters provided to the potential development partners, and some of them are more flexible. And so depending upon what you're trying to achieve, you want to pick the right tool for the job. Generally speaking, for these sites, we've recommended a request for qualification approach, where it's the evaluation really hinges upon the team's qualifications and relevant experience. There's a pretty strong statement of preferred outcomes by Bureau, but there's really a lot of flexibility in the approach. So mixed income can be defined in a lot of different ways, and the development community can respond in unique and creative ways to achieve the preferred outcomes. Okay, so let's talk about the visions and the strategies for each of the specific sites. So Lombard West, this is really a transit-oriented development opportunity site, a very unique one regionally. To have a larger undeveloped piece of property next to a regional transit center is unique and scarce, and a real opportunity to push what the region has historically defined as transit-oriented development. So that can include, thinking about how to achieve greater levels of density through high-rise construction, maybe even through innovative construction types like mass timber or modular construction, to really capitalize on its proximity to the transit. Thinking about the community benefits that are unique to this site, of course, affordable housing, mixed income would be one, but also the ground floor uses that could support the residents, if they say it's family housing or senior housing or some other kind of specific population. Are there uses on the ground floor that can support their health and well-being? Also, it's next to a transit facility. Are there opportunities for broader community services to be integrated on the ground floor and be transit accessible? There's a few unique opportunities for placemaking, open space that is integrated into the site and serves the local population or the local residents. But also, this is in a way, its own kind of gateway site. If you get off of the transit system and, you would see the site. And so is there an opportunity to really, create something special at that corner location, or engaging with TriMet to see if that triangular property south of the railroad tracks is an opportunity for green infrastructure or placemaking, or an added community benefit as well. So I won't spend a lot of time on the pre-development actions, except to say that we've identified a handful for each of the sites, recommended pre-development actions. So actions that the city to consider taking prior to releasing the development offering. We've identified each of those and happy to talk about them in quick discussion. For Broadway East, this is a smaller site. It's the smallest site. It's the vision for the site is however a downtown scale, a vertical mixed use project, 3-4 stories potentially, that extends the energy of Restaurant Row to the east. And this is a development opportunity that creates the potential for an emerging BIPOC developer or team to tackle a site that may be bigger than what they've done, but not so big that it's difficult to finance as a younger or emerging development team. The community benefits would be cultivating maybe a new generation of development, a developer, adding more businesses in food and beverage further down Broadway, and then adding new urban style housing south of Canyon. So a lot of the more urban style housing that's been built has been north of Canyon, so this could kind of set a tone south of Canyon. And then opportunities for public art, murals on the corner and the sidewalks, on the building facade, creating a very special place that adds to the fabric of Broadway. And again, a handful of recommended actions. A couple of notes on the strategy here. So seeking partnership with emerging BIPOC developer team, conducting targeted and hands-on marketing, and not only of the opportunity itself to a development team, but also trying to do a little bit of pre-marketing to some potential ground floor tenants to identify some opportunities that could be taken advantage of. So the big opportunity here, this is a combined BC2 and Beaver Dam West, 2 large sites that we think could have an opportunity to be considered together. We'll start with BC2 and we'll come back to the rationale for the entire property at once. So this is the crown jewel site, right? So this demands some iconic architecture and design that creates a really unique gathering spaces, a really unique experience on multiple edges of the site, and a curated ground floor experience. Curated on this site, but as we'll talk about, thinking about curation of the ground floor experience, the types of public spaces, the types of businesses, thinking about that curation across both sites could be a really unique opportunity that if they're considered in isolation, might be a missed opportunity. So this site's been identified as potentially adding a significant daytime employment population. So every downtown is a mixture of employees and housing of all kinds of different flavors. And this is a great opportunity to establish and grow the base of daytime employment in some kind of major way. Also, it has a lot of edges, as you can see. So there's a lot of opportunity to create different types of commercial spaces and a lot of experiences on the ground level that should be fairly unique given its size. The opportunities for placemaking are very important. So along Watson, which is the loop, that edge is very important not only to this site, but also to the broader transportation framework and circulation pattern of downtown. Obviously, Canyon is got a lot of eyeballs on it, so that corner is very important. Also, the opportunity for safer crossing across Watson to link different parts of downtown. An additional north-south connection from Canyon up to Milliken. So the opportunity to improve circulation, safety, and placemaking is quite significant with this property. Moving a little to the west, Beaver Dam West, still programmatically an emphasis on high density with active ground floor uses that activate Rose Beachy. It's sort of a one-sided main street right now with the food carts on one side that create a great deal of energy and magnetism. There's an opportunity to create and mirror a lot of that, activity on the west side of Rose Beachy and create a really vibrant little main street there. The community benefits, thinking about creating smaller spaces for retail and restaurants, integrated affordability, so mixed income, and then eventually some kind of additional north-south connectivity that will strengthen the overall connectivity of downtown. The placemaking creates opportunities we talked about at Rose Beachy, but also this sort of western gateway into downtown from Cedar Hills. There's an opportunity to define that western edge coming into downtown from Cedar Hills as well. And over the long haul, the redevelopment of this property could help to set the tone for how Beaver Dam functions in this stretch. What is its long-term function? Could it be at some point a festival street that accommodates a lot of sort of pop-up uses, etc. Again, identified some additional steps for both of the sites, pre-development actions. So releasing both of these sites in a single RFQ, we think really would make the development opportunity appealing not only to local and regional developers, but also potentially to a national audience of developers and anchor tenants. And stating a preference for a unified master development for a few reasons, but not being completely wedded to it. So that's the advantage of an RFQ, is you can say, yeah, we have a preference for a unified master development to get maybe vibrant and coordinated tenanting strategy and curated kind of tenant experience, so you don't have a lot of redundancies, and you can sort of curate the different tenants that would go in. Also, there's sort of some thematic consistencies with design, but you can state a preference for that, but you don't have to be completely wedded to it. You can say, if that doesn't seem feasible to you for whatever reason, propose, and we'll remain flexible. You can propose on a single site as well. But unless you attempt a larger redevelopment opportunity here, you'll never know if the sum could be greater than its parts. And so we're recommending to at least give it a try and see. So last but not least, the Buffet site. This has the opportunity to be a really transit high density project here that could start to redefine the building typologies and the urbanism in this part of downtown. It's been identified as a site that could be attractive for a potential cultural anchor, and or a mixed income, mixed use project, potentially senior housing. It was identified as the third phase because of the potential emphasis on the cultural anchor and the need for some additional outreach and probably support from BURA to those cultural or arts organizations to kind of help them through a potential development offering process. So could deliver on some community benefits like education, arts, culture, affordable housing, events or banquet spaces that support other arts functions in the broader downtown area, for instance. And the redevelopment of the site could really start to redefine hall and center and anchor that corner, create some unique opportunities for a unique ground floor experience that broadens the pedestrian bicycle realm, but also kind of tries to capitalize on the mature trees that are on the edge of the site today, works around some of the environmental constraints to create a very unique, but also urban experience on the corner. So I know that was a lot of information. We can rewind the tape and go back to anywhere we need to, but just to reiterate the questions, so the goals that we talked about capture the right priorities, the site vision to meet those priorities, and what additional detail do you all need in preparation for action in July?
Thank you, Alex. Okay, we're going to open things up for questions and discussion. Please use the chat if you would like to participate in that. And we'll start first with Cassandra.
Thank you. I'm so impressed. I'm not a planning professional, so I may be easily impressed, but I feel like this was such a cogent and really, really thoughtful presentation of suggestions for this space. I totally agree with your assessment that we need some commercial presence there. And I like the idea of releasing both sites at the same time to attract that national interest for that purpose. I mean, we are obviously interested in seeing that increment grow faster so that the area can develop and have the most value and vibrancy as possible. And I think that if you have commercial element, not only is that good for now, but for the long-term valuation. So I think your overall development strategy is thoughtful and sound. I wouldn't have anything else that I would need to see in it, but I like that you included BIPOC considerations, things like childcare and other things that would attract people to live and work in the area. I also agreed with your concept of, you know, how you would market this for those national developers. It was excellent. I really appreciate how thorough this presentation was. So I would not really necessarily need to see more strategy details in advance of July, but it would be helpful to understand some of the language that would be placed in whatever the concept is, whether that's request for proposal or the other two qualifications. And I can't remember the acronym, the third acronym, but I'd be more interested in that language, but I thought this was outstanding and I appreciate it.
Board Member Hartmeyer-Prig.
Thank you. I'll echo everything Cassandra, Board Member Olvin said. I like the phases because I think it kind of breaks this into like a digestible body of work. And really, really love to see the mix of uses across the 5 properties. Affordable housing is something so important. It is both a priority of our city and of this entity. And so Lombard West is something I really look forward to seeing, like what it can become. And I know that like there's a lot of, I love the go look at these things too. Like if we could get that TriMet piece that's nearby to become that like green integrated park space or something, like something really special can kind of happen near that transit center that's like, you know, on one side is kind of activated and on the other side is not activated. So I love to see like that potential there. I think the only question that I'd be kind of curious about that wouldn't prevent me from like I would still be supportive, but I'm curious for the sites, BC2 and Beaver Dam West. Previously, we've been kind of exploring a mixed use office type development at the BC2 site. And ultimately, COVID really changed, you know, the landscape and the feasibility of us supporting kind of an office or commercial. I think it was more like office, you know, focused space there. And so I'm curious if by putting the 2 parcels into a project together, like, do we think that that makes it enticing enough to like maybe attract a larger size entity who would be interested in that being kind of like a little like split mini campus or something, right? So I'm kind of curious about, is there demand for an office / larger commercial thing happening there if we put the 2 parcels together, or if that office feasibility is not the piece that we should be getting after? So that's the thing I would be curious to know more about, Alex. But I also really like the idea of putting the 2 together and just kind of seeing people's ideas, but not requiring that the 2 be developed together necessarily.
Yeah, can I respond?
Please do.
Okay. Yeah, I think all good feedback. I think the question about office is one that we all as a broader team wrestled with a little bit because understandably a lot of people have a lot of trepidation about investing in office right now. There's a lot of increasing vacancies in parts of our region for a lot of types of office. The one little glimmer of hope is that there's what people have coined the sort of flight to quality. So a lot of the high amenity offices that are really wonderful places to work, that have all this stuff, people want: outdoor spaces, gyms, access to nearby food, all the kind of ingredients of what makes going to work fun. Those have done pretty well. The market is still not yet ready to make investments in those. So I think it will be incumbent upon the city to invest some time to try and see if they can strengthen the argument that there is a there prior to going into the development offering process. But I do think also that marketing this to a broader audience, if more eyeballs see the opportunity, then in some ways that does raise your potential for securing a development partner. And also people who have connections into the world of larger employment users that may come to town, may relocate a portion of their operations that a regional developer, local developer may not have eyes on. So for all those reasons, we think it's at least worth the try, but it'll take some rolling up the sleeves of staff as well.
Thank you.
Board Member Teeter.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a few different comments. The first is about the north-south connectors that have been mentioned a few times between Beaver Dam, or between Canyon and Milliken. Yeah, like those. I see value in those if those are focused on being for people walking or on bikes or on scooters. But the distance between the nearby streets, like, it's not that far, but if that's like a little neighborhood route, just a quick and easy and casual access point for people walking through the neighborhood or exploring, I think that's where the value could be. Yeah, so that's my comment on that one. I have some frustration over this strategy, and I think it's because, like, I have an urban planning background that's really grounded in like how downtowns have historically developed, not by going after major redevelopment or developer opportunities, but by investing in local ownership of the land and local opportunity. And when I see us potentially combining these two sites, yes, there's excitement about getting national developers, but the sheer size and scope of it puts it out of reach for many, many people in Beaverton who might not necessarily see themselves as developers, but who might love to build a 3 or 4, 5-story building that's not taking up a ton of land, but has space for ground floor commercial, middle floor office, or housing. So I see value in saying, yes, let's try to put it out there at the national level. But I don't see us also trying the different approach of the approach that's hyper local. The approach that says, let's divide this up and see what it would look like small scale across the board. I also think back to economic development strategies that were used for many decades, but I think people are getting away from now. The term called smokestack chasing, where towns would go after the biggest factories they could get, or these days, I guess it's going after Amazon, and you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And I'm just such a fan of diversifying the participants in our economy and the participants in our land use, so that we've got a wide variety of uses, like all on one site. That said, I do think we need more office. I think there's the opportunity for it. Councillor Tivenon and I went to a ribbon cutting of a new office user on the round. They were very excited. It was that quality experience that just mentioned that really drew them there. So I do think we've got a pretty ripe opportunity for that. So I say all of this, I'll summarize it by saying, yes, I see potential with the portfolio here. I have some concerns, and I wish we could just try the other end of the spectrum too, that's more focused on local options.
Yeah, just a really quick follow-up. I think all good feedback. The scale of these sites just in an individually, most of them is quite large and would be there would have to be a pretty concerted effort to think about how to break them apart in order to pursue like very, very local developers who may not be as well capitalized, but that's one thought. Just that the size of them is somewhat limiting in that way as they currently sit. But the Broadway East site that we talked about is one opportunity for that, exactly what you're talking about, to grow a new or help a new development team or developer kind of get a foothold in a project that maybe is a little bit bigger than what they've done, but sets them on a path to do bigger and better things. So
yes,
it's represented on one property.
Yes, yeah, thank you. And that's a good point. Broadway East, I think, is a great example. And so if this portfolio strategy moves forward, I think for Bureau Board and staff, keeping an eye on how Broadway East works could be a great model for future sites as we continue to move forward. So yes, that's a great point. Then one other comment is focused on Milliken. We focus a lot on how Beaver Dam can be a special street or pedestrian only, and I think that's true. But I think that stretch of Milliken between Watson and Cedar Hills is really important, especially if the Milliken Road Extension project moves forward to the east of that, thinking about how that street ties in with protected infrastructure and nice, comfortable sidewalks. I think that'll be a really important piece of this. And I don't want us to get comfortable with what's there now, but think about how we can make it better moving forward. But yeah, thank you, Alex, for clarification there.
Thank you. Board Member Walton.
Yeah, thank you for all the information. Really, really helpful. I just had a couple quick thoughts. Similar, I think, to what board member or Councilor Teeter was saying, is the sort of combined version of this. I feel like, I don't know, and again, this is sort of gut instinct, but it feels like it would sort of exist as two interesting, unique projects versus sort of one combined. I think there's a sentiment in many of the comments about that. I don't know, just providing two different sort of looks and feels and sort of making it unique versus like that being sort of like one cohesive development. I think, I don't know, instinctually it feels big. The second thing was in the Broadway piece you talked about, there was a lot of emphasis around the BIPOC, whether it was through the developer or just sort of wealth building and things like, but that was sort of lost a little bit in the other ones. And I understand the size and scale piece of this one is more attainable, but that wealth building piece, I think it's, as you think about the other sites, making sure that there's sort of that being a thread, because it feels like, and again, this is, the perception could be like, it's kind of pejorative in that like we're like checking the box, like we're thinking about it and it's sort of like on this one box over here, versus sort of making it a thread throughout. So just because it's a big developer who develops it doesn't mean it couldn't be a source for wealth creation within the BIPOC community. So ownership versus rentals, things like that. So I would just say like that felt like it was sort of like really a strong thread. And I missed one of the ones in detail because I had children in here. So apologies if I missed it there, but just sort of making that a little bit more of like sort of a thread throughout would be sort of a push. And then I love what Kevin or Peter, counselor, whatever, about the like unique, innovative solutions. So like we're talking about with that BC2 Beaverton site, right in the middle is that DG food cartel. And I remember that was sort of like flew counter to all the rules and sort of had to break the mold of development and city code and all this sort of stuff to sort of like get it across the finish line. It was a really creative approach. And at the time, things weren't built for that. And so stuff like that, it shows like that if there's a good idea, the city will sort of get behind it. It was like a huge point of pride for me with the city that sort of it went through like sort of figuring it out to make it happen. And so I think about the same thing, and you see like certain cities get famous for sort of odd things. Like I remember Austin with the container market, and that became like really popular, or Rainy Street. Like these are very characteristic of the communities, and I think way more than a big thing, create a big splash and a lot of sort of awareness of that community. And I think Beaverton has this like cool weirdness that we could sort of leverage and sort of keep that vibe versus sort of being like corporate-y. So I love that concept, and I was really happy to hear that sort of echoed through what Councilor Peter was saying. So just again, it's not there, but I'm just saying sort of that thread of, especially if you're gonna sort of RFI, like in the write-up, in the brief, it's like sort of prompting that creativity and that Beaverton-ness and that sort of heritage of the site, versus, you know, take a building that you could build anywhere and sort of pop it down here. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, so related to the last two comments, I think, you know, lucky for you all, the city owns these sites, and you can, you don't have to you're not compelled to, you know, offload it to a boring concept. And so I think there's a lot of tone setting and expectation setting that can come across in the marketing materials and in the request, the development proposal, that can help people understand really what you're after and how you will be evaluating, you know, grading these proposals that can really shape in a meaningful way what gets put forward. And the quirkiness or the sort of localness of particularly the ground floor experience will probably, if the development strategy holds, will be a pretty important part of what gets conveyed to the developers.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
Board Member Kim.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I kind of was on the same path. To start with, I appreciate the presentation. I think this lays it out really well. It was, I think, when we were looking at all five, it seems like we were looking at all five concurrently. It was kind of overwhelming. So this is very helpful. I like the idea of combining the properties to try to, the two properties that we're looking at now, to try to get a larger developer. I think what's been already discussed is really the point. When you have a larger developer, they can be asked to create a certain part of this that accommodates incubator businesses as part of their concept, and they probably have more opportunities to do that than a smaller one who might not have as much flexibility or room. So I also think part of quote unquote diversity is having small developments and large developments, because they serve different purposes. I also think that as part of larger development, whether it's this or others, not necessarily quote unquote large, but if city can play a part in connecting the developer with an anchor that we would like to see, because we are the ones who have the connections, the city staff. As an example, if we can somehow get a PCC to put in a mini campus in here, or University of Oregon had an extension, you know, at Bethany, there's University of Portland actually, and somebody like that, or whatever else that is a quote unquote anchor or a draw that is a real asset to the, you know, asset to the community that we would like to see, and maybe we're the one who can help the developer bring that. A little comment about the office. From what I can figure out, a lot of people don't really know, experts don't know where the office is going. There's a real change happening. And I would be, again, in my view, Bureau's job is to actually look 10, 20, 30 years out. Most of what we do, we don't have the ability or luxury to look 10, 20, 30 years out. And so we're talking about the personality of Beaver Dam. We can't, that is really looking forward many years. And that's what's exciting about Bureau, I think. And same with office. I don't think we yet know because of these changes happening. So I would be wary of pushing to, not in addition to office projects not being able to be financed right now. Maybe that's part of it. The last comment I want to make is, and then I do want to make that the way I see it, these developments are certainly important for what Bureau can, projects that we can put in there, but just as important is how this needs to be catalytic, that it would increase value of properties across the street and adjacent so that they will reap the benefit and they will also get improved. And it's just we're not just talking about the blocks, we're talking about the whole area. The last comment I want to make is on equity. I think equity, I know you talked about it a lot. It is just something that's very, in my mind, as we go further into the process, it's easy for that to be diluted or somehow get behind getting the project done, less important than getting the project done or something. So I would be interested to know if there's a way to keep that at the forefront all the way through to the end. And I know it's a challenge because like as an example, if we really somebody want to put it, or we want to put in an incubator business, they typically have high turnover, they can't pay as much rent. And so it becomes just difficult thing to pull off without a lot of subsidy. So I would be interested in a nice formula to really make that a reality and have it be sustainable. Thank you.
Board Member Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I just want to respond to Councilor Teeter's point about like the hyperlocal. And I think for me, when I see this whole portfolio, there's opportunity to Member Kim's point of diversity in the way that we handle these properties. But I think when we look at BC2 and Beaver Dam West specifically, this agency and staff have put a significant amount of time in to turn these into bigger parcels so that we could create opportunity. So I think it's important for us to be thinking about like the years of work that have gone into building Bureau's portfolio and making sure that we're using it, I think, for that kind of transformational change. And I love that concept of that catalytic impact. Having some of these larger spaces, I think, you can see it in that diagram that the bubble grows for this area more than it does for some of the others, right? You can see that the potential of that catalytic impact is significant when we look at this as one or two large projects. So I just want to make sure that we are conscientious of like all of the work that has gone into compile these into a significant enough piece of land for us to look at these bigger projects and the proximity to that larger strategic plan in the area.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's some sunk time and cost in assembling the big parcels. It's also, I think, worth acknowledging that these are not likely to be the last properties that come into ownership by Bureau. And so if, trying to identify properties like the Broadway East site, which were sort of an opportunistic pickup, that it's small, it didn't have a clear sort of what are we going to do with this destiny. If there's more opportunities that come along like that, it can be part of the organizational strategy to seek out ways to find those base hit project sites, right, that aren't huge, but that can play a really important role in growing a new generation of developers, BIPOC developers, and are just as important to the fabric of these different sub-districts of downtown as well.
Okay, well, I think I'll weigh in here. I thank you so much, everyone, for your comments, and Alex for your responses. And I have just a couple things to add on to the conversation so far, and then a question. So the part that gets me most excited is that little Broadway East parcel, because of how that area is activated. And looking at all these in concert with each other tonight has been really, really helpful at kind of driving home the point for me that how pedestrians, especially amongst other uses, how they're going to interact with these sites is totally different. So this one, you can walk from one end of Broadway to the other of the little main street and have a really awesome experience, visit a lot of different little shops, meander and stroll because the street allows that and entices you into doing that. Some of these other parcels are hemmed in by residential on all sides, like the Lombard site, and right next to transit. So housing is the very first thing that comes to mind, and some shops that are really positioned for residential. You know, that what you were discussing. The site that's kind of adjacent to the art center seems like it's just this opportunity to continue to build on the epicenter of the arts that's right there. And then to the BC2 site and Beaver Dam West site, I think that catalytic project that we're talking about is in and of itself, you almost have to have some alchemy in there just to get the right thing in. But they're all very different, and there's so many opportunities. It's very, very exciting that we've got so many different types of things in our portfolio that we can dream about. I went to Savannah, Georgia just recently, a couple of months ago on a vacation, and they said that their major economic driver aside from tourism is the Savannah College of Art and Design, and like big time. They have buildings all over Savannah, and the relationship with that college and the city is completely intertwined. And it's a beautiful, vibrant place to be because it's like a little incubator for new creative energy and ideas from all of these students coming through and the professors and whatnot. So I love the thought of us having some sort of an anchor for especially the idea of like PCC or somebody coming in that lots of different folks are going to be able to access that across all sorts of interests and income levels and backgrounds. Not like an office building where it's pretty defined once you get tenants into it, but a campus of some sort for education is really, really cool. So we'll see what comes of that. The question that I had, you had touched on it briefly, and somebody had mentioned how we're talking decades to see some of these things come to fruition. In the meantime, you talked about the sites and potential interim uses for them as they're awaiting the right developer or the right moment for that. Can you expand on what some of those uses could be? Because we have talked kind of glancing blows. I don't even know if we've officially talked about it as a Bureau board, but activating some of those sites with things that, like you said, help to avoid blight and make them safe, but also to take advantage of these surfaces that we have now. So can you talk at all about that, what you're seeing, what some trends are, what some useful ways of activating the sites are before they get developed?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And of course, what's going to work on a given site is very related to the site itself. Whether, some kind of pop-up commercial is going to work, it sort of depends on the context. Whether some sort of artistic expression or opportunity for artistic expression kind of depends on the site. But, there's a couple things to consider. One is you want to make sure that people are aware that it is an interim use, and you're setting expectations up correctly with the public that we want this to be additive to the downtown for now, but we have grander ambitions for it. So that's sort of a communication expectation I think is important. But art, art installations at key corners, ways of, having not just a chain link fence around it, but some sort of, expressive opportunity at the edges, interactive, opportunities for people to sort of to solicit, people's dreams, on the canvas that's created. So thinking about these things as a temporary canvas in some way, shape, or form. The places that do have some sort of commercial potential, or portions of the site that have commercial potential, pop-up or interim or special event uses could be considered. That requires, more coordination and investment of time. But so everything from a stationary, expressive art, interactive, art or community dreaming, if you will, all the way to a more economic use, but temporary or pop-up in nature of the sites is possible. Great. I think the one that probably deserves the most thought and is the buffet site, just because the building is in disrepair, and how would you use that site in a way while the investigation into kind of a community or cultural or arts anchor is underway? How would you use it in a way that adds to the surrounding properties in a way that's safe and cost effective? That's probably the most tricky one right now, because it's on sort of the furthest time horizon, and the building's in some need of repair, or well, it's in need of a lot, and I'm not sure it can be used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
But the timeline that we're anticipating for the other sites is, development has a multi-year process of design and permitting and construction and all that. But there's no reason to think that this portfolio shouldn't be pretty far along within a few years. We're proposing to get 2 of the sites out into the public this year, if that's within staff capacity, and then potentially getting this package here prepped for release sometime next year or the year after. So it's not as far off as maybe you think.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. And I know we've got a couple other items on the agenda. I see Board Member Kim has a comment. I think we'll try and move on after that one. But Board Member Kim, would you like to?
Yes, sorry about that. I'll keep it really short. There's a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. One is on density. I would like to see just absolutely as much density as possible. I think that activates the area, not in addition to us just having this housing shortage crisis, and maybe and some of these, the Lombard site, I mean, it's like right across the street from transit. There should be an absolute maximum density, and if we have a way to push that, that would be great. Second thing is the discussion, the comment that was made about BIPOC developer or novice developer, inexperienced developer coming in. I think that's really interesting, and that is challenging because they can not get financing. Banks don't want to finance inexperienced developers. So if we can somehow figure out a way to make this happen somehow, I think that would be really, really cool. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Great. Well, thank you. It looks like Board Member Vitko is going to have to leave us at 9 p.m. I believe we'll have quorum. We are going to wrap up this portion of the agenda. Thank you very much to Alex Joyce for joining us, and Janine for opening things up. Is there anything else that you need from us tonight? No?
No, thank you very much. We'll see you in July.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll be moving on to our next agenda item. This is Bureau Bill 2023-50, the Downtown Beaverton Parks and Open Space Framework Plan Draft Goals. Sarah, please introduce yourself and take it away.
I will, thank you. And with me also, if he's still here, I want to introduce Gary Keck, who's my co-project manager from THPRD. I think you all know from a previous presentation that this is a joint effort between the two agencies to try to bring in new open spaces into our downtown. It's really fortuitous that we got to follow Alex in this presentation because he made a very good case for why we need additional open space downtown. I mean, not only is it important for just our health and mental well-being, but it also is a catalyst for development. And we heard that developers want to see more in downtown Beaverton as well. Let me share my screen. It's late, so we'll go through this slideshow pretty quickly. Let me see, is that the one I want? I think this is the one I want. All right, is that in a slideshow format? I can't tell.
No, it is not. It's still in the.
Okay.
There you go. Now it's in
presenter. All right, great. Thank you for that. Okay. Well, you're going to hear. You'll see many things on the screen that reiterate what you just heard from Alex. I'm not going to spend a lot of time repeating it for the interest of time. So again, it was really wonderful that we got to follow Alex. Okay, so Alex also talked about all the previous efforts that we've done planning downtown recently. And I want to step back and remind us why we're doing this effort. It became apparent to us that despite all the recent projects, particularly the downtown design project, as well as some of the visioning work that THPRD has done recently, that we needed a more focused plan on specifically around open space downtown. We needed to focus on parks, open spaces, and trails. And we also really needed to think about how we can catalyze high quality private development. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna just run through these really quickly. So we put together a scope for a framework plan downtown. And this framework plan will describe the types of parks that we anticipate needing and wanting to see downtown. We'll recommend general areas for new or improved parks and natural areas and trails. We're not going to pinpoint, in most cases, we're not pinpointing specific properties. Again, this is a framework plan. We're going to stay fairly high level. We'll talk about amenities that we need downtown, much of which you already heard about today already, the look and feel of those amenities, and then how can we make the spaces welcome? And all of that will be wrapped up to in an implementation strategy with immediate and future actions. When we talk about downtown, we're close to following the urban renewal boundary there. Center Street to the north, 5th Street to the south, approximately 117th on the east, and Cedar Hills on the west there, and then looping around the high school. So we relied on two kinds of engagement. One, we looked very carefully at the engagement that we had already done recently, as well as engagement from parallel processes like this one and like the downtown equity strategy. What I really found most fruitful in our engagement was down there in the teal box, focusing on some of the, doing some focus groups with organizations that we either haven't reached out to much in the past or have just not been well represented in past planning efforts. So our multilingual focus groups, our youth focus groups, and our disability focus groups in particular were really fruitful endeavors for us and informed what you'll hear tonight. And what did we hear? Well, as this is not going to be a surprise to you because we've heard this in other planning efforts and you just heard about it earlier this evening. Both what the community has said they want is they want connections to nature. They want play for all ages and abilities. They want more events, more opportunities to gather, more culturally specific events, more spaces where they can enjoy food and music and theater, Not surprisingly, they want restrooms, they want shade, they want water, and water can be anything from a drinking fountain to creek access to splash pads, for example. People are very drawn to water in our parks. And they want to see multiple activities within parks and open spaces. And that's really important because, you know, we just talked about the fact that downtown will have plenty of density. We talk about the fact that downtown will have a wide variety of residential units. It will have residential, it will have commercial, it will have retail, it will have all kinds of uses. So parks and open spaces, parks and plazas need to do almost double duty, right? They need to serve a wide variety of constituents in their spaces. Not every space has to serve every constituency, but we have to meet the needs of all of the folks that are going to be downtown, living, working, and playing downtown. And so those will just be a little bit more concentrated in their uses. And then, as we heard, also developers want to see more spaces downtown. And we know that high quality spaces also catalyze the kind of development that we want to see. So what we're going to talk about tonight is goals. When you see the plan in July, you will see these goals, which we've organized into sort of 4 categories. You will also see a variety of actions that support these goals. I'm not going to get into a variety of actions right now. We're still finalizing those, but I'll mention a couple of actions for some of these goals to give you a flavor of what we're talking about. So our first theme is gather community. And the kind of goals that we have under this include locate and design new parks and open spaces to align with our growth, close service gaps. We know we don't have enough spaces downtown, and offer safe pedestrian access. We want to make sure that there are enough spaces, parks, plazas, that people don't have to cross major transportation barriers to get there. We want things to be easily accessible and safely accessible. So you will see you'll see actions that talk about, first and foremost, the need for both THPRD and the city to work together in determining where these spaces will be located. You know, THPRD has plans to actually purchase some property and implement some of this plan or bring new spaces. We're going to want to work collaboratively to determine just where the right location for those spaces will be. I want to talk a little bit too about collaborating with developers to offer accessible parks and open spaces. You saw when we talked about several of our Bureau properties that some of the placemaking amenities include plazas. You know, the city of Beaverton provides parks and open spaces. THPRD, of course, is our provider of parks in the region. And so those are publicly owned, publicly operated, publicly developed space. But there's an important role here for the private sector too, and Alex touched on it. And that is the private sector and developers can also be an important provider of these spaces. These spaces can both serve their own populations, but when these spaces are allowed either by public easement or they're actually turned over to public agency, these privately developed spaces can support not only the immediate development, but the area around it as well. And if you can imagine, we have some larger parks that maybe THPRD has developed downtown, but then in, you know, either every development or every couple of blocks, we've also got a privately developed but publicly accessible plaza that can serve the micro area. That actually ends up being a pretty rich mosaic of spaces that people can use and enjoy. So you'll see some actions around that, supporting that, both through city code as well as some of THPRD's actions. Welcome and celebrate. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you heard a lot from Alex about how important it is for us to program spaces, to provide spaces that can be programmed for a variety of events, whether it's 20 people or 200 people. or more. It's really, Beaverton loves these events. People love to come together. We want to make sure we provide more of those spaces. We want to make sure that they're welcoming, they're accessible. They probably need to be including bathrooms or places for us to bring that kind of relief in. And we want to make sure that these spaces are have the kinds of infrastructure that can support bringing a variety of events together. And we just talked a little bit about pop-ups and short-term parks and open spaces. It's very possible that if THPRD buys property for a park, they may not be able to develop it right away. They may not have the funding to actually develop the park. So THPRD may be interested in doing some sort of interim type of park spaces. What can we do on our development code side to make that as easy as possible? Conversely, Alex talked about bringing art, and that's something I know staff has talked about, bringing art to our spaces in Bureau. But these interim uses also run into roadblocks, not only from our own development code, but from some of our partner agencies have requirements that come into play that make it difficult or expensive to make modest improvements to these spaces to make them a little less blighted. Or let me say, what we hope to be modest improvements end up being really expensive improvements. And here's an example. If you want to provide art in a space in an interim manner, if you are going to invite the public to come in and interact with the art, you have to make sure that the surface of the space meets ADA requirements. And if it's a gravel lot, that's probably not going to be the case. So then you have to look at what kind of improvements do you make, and often those end up triggering other requirements. So unfortunately, sometimes pop-ups and short-term interim activation ideas that we have end up being a lot more expensive and a lot more involved than we wish they were. So we're going to be advising that we look at ways to make those kinds of spaces easier. Reflect and protect nature. Again, Alex talked about the creeks. We heard a lot about water. As I said, integrating nature into parks and plazas, that can be done by a number of ways. Again, bringing water elements, having trees and shade, very important. People really want that. It could be things like nature playgrounds. Many of you know what a nature play is, where instead of traditional playground equipment, we're using more natural types of elements like logs and rocks, for example, that kids can play on. So that kind of gives us a palette that we can work from and think about as we move forward with these spaces. The creeks were big. We didn't feel like it was important to try to put a statement that said we need to absolutely do a trail along all of our creeks, because we know that that's very difficult. And what we felt instead is it's important to talk about working towards enhancing public access and views. So that could be done with overlooks. That could be done with something big and bold, like by creating a large park adjacent to Beaverton Creek, for example. I will say also, we heard a lot about the need for dog runs and dog parks in our downtown spaces. So you'll see that in the plan, looking at Roy's dog. And I think, anything from locating big parks on creeks to something small, like when we replace bridges that go over the creek. Let's make those bridges transparent, so both from pedestrians, cyclists, and those in vehicles can actually see the creek as they're going across the bridge. That's not the case today. So there are a variety of actions around supporting and reflecting and bringing nature into our spaces downtown. And then lastly, connect. And I think we've talked a lot about it's important for us to have safe routes to get to and from these kinds of spaces, and between these spaces and other amenities downtown, other destinations downtown, and that we want to make sure that we include these in our wayfinding, in our branding, Let's make them a part of what makes downtown Beaverton really special. So in July, we're going to bring a draft plan to you, and that plan will include things like introductions, existing conditions, and community input. Then we'll get to the heart of it, which is the goals that you heard today and supporting actions. We will also have a framework plan map. To the extent that we can map these ideas, we will bring a map forward and include that as part of the plan. And then we'll have an implementation strategy with actions, rules, responsibilities, and we're either toying with timelines or priorities. We haven't determined what we want to reflect yet in that implementation strategy. So with that, I am going to open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Discussion?
Anything you see is missing that you'd like to see reflected or you have questions about?
Yeah, I'll chime in really fast.
Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was trying to type my name in the chat, but I kept messing up. I love the idea of testing out concepts, especially in some of our vacant lots where we wait to find the right development strategy or developer. There are some really great examples from other cities that I think we can model. I just recently saw an example from Detroit that they've got like a summer pop-up with all sorts of games and putt-putt and basketball that they've put out there. It just looks amazing. It's very exciting. And I would love for us to see what we can do in this sort of thing. But I love the strategy here. I love the partnership. I think there's a ton of opportunity for THPRD to have a very strong presence in downtown. So I think this is very needed. Thank you. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Board Member Walton.
Yeah, Sarah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the engaging presentation and all the work that's been done. I think it's hard to give the presentation at 9 p.m. And you did a lovely job, and I love the outreach. And again, sort of just all the context and all the ideas. So again, super supportive. As somebody who lives sort of downtown adjacent, I love it. And sort of here for it. And I love the idea of like trialing things. Because sometimes, you know, that if you build it, they will come isn't always true. Especially for large capital infrastructure things like water. It's hard to test, but sort of testing utilization of existing water sort of features around only gets us so far because not everybody has access to those if they don't have transportation. So I love the idea of testing and trying. And again, bringing more of this to our community, but also just want to say thank you for engaging us all at 9 p.m.
Thank you. Okay, well, if there's nothing else from the board, I echo that. Thank you very much for your work on this. The council's had an opportunity to see this presentation a couple times, so I won't weigh in with more thoughts on it other than to say I, along with Board Member Teeter, I'm also very excited about the idea of THPRD playing a really awesome integral role in what this will ultimately look like. And also changing the narrative for some of our folks about what a park can look like. It doesn't always have to just have grass in it or rec centers. Those are great things, but what does it look like to have plazas in our downtown core that can be utilized in all sorts of different ways at all sorts of different times of day throughout the year. We'll look forward to hearing more on this. And is there anything else that you need from us tonight? No? Okay.
No, thank you for your attention at such a late hour.
Well, thank you for sticking around with us, and have a wonderful evening. We'll be moving on to our next agenda item, Bureau Bill 2023-51, Amendment to the Intergovernmental Agreement between the City of Beaverton, Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency, and Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District for the development of a downtown Beaverton Parks and Open Space Framework Plan. Sarah, go ahead.
Okay, Yeah, so we're talking about since we're talking about the plan, this is, I actually have a very, 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 very like one slide presentation here. Let me make sure that you've got the right one, and let me make sure that it's in a slide format. Can you see this?
We can see it, but it's not being projected. There you go.
There we go. Okay, all right. So we're here to ask your blessing and an amendment to our intergovernmental agreement. I talked about this being a partnership between two agencies. Actually, technically, it's a partnership between three agencies, between the city, between THPRD, and between Bureau. And we're here to talk about an amendment that provides a little bit more money to the contract that we have with agency landscape and planning, as well as Mayor Reed. That's our landscape and design team. So our original contract was for $100,000. We are looking for an additional $26,000 because we changed the scope a little bit of this project. And there are really two drivers on that. First of all, we undertook a little bit more public engagement than we originally anticipated. We felt it was well worth it. And two, we underestimated, because these agencies have really never worked together in this kind of a plan before, we underestimated how much time, both staff time as well as consultant time, it would take for all of us to discuss things, to make sure we were coordinated. So we just needed more time to work with THPRD, to work through these ideas, make sure we were in alignment before we then told the consultant what to do and to how to change things. So that just took more time, and we determined we needed another $26,000 for their contract. Now THPRD is going to pick up half that cost, because traditionally in this original contract, we shared costs between THPRD and between the city. The city and Bureau covered the city's share equally. So THPRD is going to put $13,000 in for this contract, and we are asking this evening for $13,000 from Bureau and an approval of an intergovernmental agreement that will reflect that this contract is now $126,000, and the parties are putting in extra money. So I hope that's clear. So the action I need from you tonight is actually to approve this amendment.
Thank you, Sarah. Before we move on to that, does anyone have any questions?
I was just going to make a motion to approve the $13,000 contribution to move this forward.
Second.
Can I amend Board Member Olvin's motion just slightly? Because in addition to that, we just need to include that we're approving that first amendment of the IGA.
Copy. I will revise that to make a motion to approve the amendment in the IGA and support the program moving forward.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Board members Hartmeyer Prigg.
Yes.
Roy Kim.
Yes.
Edward Kimmy.
Yes.
Teeter.
Yes.
Tivnon.
Yes.
Olvin.
Yes.
Vitko left and Walton.
Yeah.
Passes 7-0.
All right, congratulations, Sarah. Looking forward to seeing what you do, work your magic. Okay, well, we are on to our last agenda item of the evening and a very special executive director's report from Cheryl Tweedy.
Thank you very much, Chair Tivnon. Well,
Board members, thank you so much for your endurance tonight. I know it's really late. We've essentially conducted 2 meetings in the span of one session this evening. So thank you for your energy and all of your excellent comments and feedback. I wanted to let you know a couple quick things Bureau-wide. Number one, we do not have a downtown project update matrix for you this evening. We've been a little bit busy working on budget activities, and I'm sure that Chase will get back on that next month for you. I know you appreciate it. Gives you a lot of good up-to-date information about projects and activities within the Bureau District. One important and impactful item that I wanted to share with you this evening is that the long vacant and derelict former Fong Chong restaurant located at the corner of Watson and Canyon Road has been demolished. If you haven't been by there in the last week or so, you might not have noticed. Much thanks to our city code compliance team and the city attorney's office and how they worked with the property owner to eliminate this really dangerous and unsightly property in our core area. We don't know what the owner's future plans are, but we will continue to work with them and to talk with them. So we're really pleased that we were able to get the site to this state because the building was truly dangerous and we were concerned that somebody might get hurt. And on that note, I would like to make a couple of comments to kind of acknowledge, as you have started, that this is my last Bureau meeting as your executive director. It feels pretty surreal to be in a place of saying farewell to you all and getting ready to retire. I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to have served as your Bureau Executive Director and your City Community Director, Development Director for these past 9 years. It's been an amazing time in the life, the history, in the life of the city, and I'm just so thrilled to have been part of it all. You know, as a team, we've accomplished many wonderful and challenging projects and activities. I want to thank you for your commitment and for believing that our plans and dreams were possible, even despite COVID. We have analyzed and strategized and assessed options and debated, and more importantly, learned about the elements of successful and equitable downtowns and development. In the past decade, Bureau has made a visible and a meaningful difference and created a vibrant downtown that our community loves. Who remembers all those surface parking lots that we had 10 years back? I've been fortunate to have a long and satisfying career, 38 years in the public sector to be exact. And I want you to know that I view the work we have done together here in Beaverton as some of my proudest and most rewarding. There is more work for Bureau to be doing in the coming years, and I can't wait to see what your future projects will be and how you'll continue to transform our downtown area. And while I won't be in the executive director spot going forward, I'll be watching from afar and cheering you on. So please let me close by saying a couple of thank yous. First of all, I want to say thank you to the core Bureau staff team. Tyler and Cadence and Janine and Sarah and Chase and Molly and Katie and the whole rest of the development division. You have been amazing professionals and very creative and so dedicated to your craft. Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to Bill and Peter and Robin and Megan in the city attorney's office. They are a vital part of how all of this work gets done as well. And thank you to our finance staff, Patrick, Susan, and Debbie, who have worked hard to figure out this thing called urban renewal and tax increment and how best to utilize it for our community. And I want to thank Jenny and the rest of the executive team for guidance and support. And finally, I want to thank you, the Bureau Board, past and present, for your dynamic and bold leadership. And after hearing the presentations tonight, I just know you're going to continue to do wonderful things for our community. So thank you for your service, and thank you for believing that Beaverton has a destiny to be a true urban suburban community. And with that, I'll say good evening.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to add a little something that years ago when I was at Echo Northwest, people that I profoundly respected talked about this woman named Cheryl Tweedy in the halls. They were working on the Urban Renewal District Plan, the Creekside Master Plan, and had nothing but glowing things to say about you. When I won office, one of the things I was most excited about was the prospect that I would get to work with you. And not only were the things that I'd heard about you true, but they paled in comparison to what I got to see firsthand, which is just absolute grace in the way that you've led. This 100% belief that customer service extends into every single action that we take. And through your leadership and vision and the way that you've articulated things, I think you've really helped the board make good, informed decisions. And it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you. And I feel extra lucky that I got to be the chair and to help wish you the best and a big congratulations on your retirement.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
And we have some others that have some things they'd like to say. We'll start with board member Hartmeyer-Prigg.
I'll keep it quick because that was so perfect, Allison. Cheryl, I just really want to make a motion that you have to stay and you can't leave us. But I know it doesn't work that way. We've been so lucky to have your leadership, and I know more often than not, we didn't have enough time to get to your report, but please know like how much like everything you sent to us and all the ways that you just guided us as a board. I'm going to miss it, and I'm going to miss just talking ideas with you, because I think you're a true innovator, and I think your leadership has really helped like your voice and your impact on our city and on this district are really going to be, I mean, it's a different city than I grew up in, and you have had a hand in that, and in a really beautiful way. So just huge thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Board member Olvin.
Well, I had the opportunity to be part of the process so early on when it was also aspirational and idealistic, and to see how much you have brought that vision forward, and the way that your team, who are so thoughtful and intelligent and just really good practitioners, have made this plan into something real has been absolutely incredible to watch. Far exceeded what I would have thought all those years ago, and I was optimistic. So that is proof of your leadership and your team's, great abilities. And I hope that you're doing something fun so you can relax and enjoy, seeing what you've accomplished and having some other fun.
Thank you. Yeah.
Board member Walton.
Yeah, I just have a quick 30-minute presentation about all of your greatness. So I hope everybody has a couple more minutes for us. I just prepared like 50 slides, so it should be relatively quick. No, in all seriousness, thank you for everything. You should feel so proud to echo everything that everybody has said. It's been an absolute pleasure to have gotten to work with you, and I wish you like all the best in the time of sort of your retirement. If you haven't already, I challenge you to take up pickleball. It's very fun. I'll see you on the court. But thank you. And again, very few people have a job that you get to like drive by and tangibly see the impact that you've had, which is pretty cool. So thank you for everything. I know we will sort of all be filling a huge void of you, but wish you all the best. And thanks for everything.
Thank you so much.
Board member Teeter.
Yeah, Cheryl, we will miss you. You were one of the very first people I met in Beaverton, and you gave me such a warm welcome. I know I worked with your staff more than I worked with you, but I think your empathy and your compassion and your leadership was reflected in their service to the community and their support of all the progress that we are making. And I heard the way that they spoke about you. I hear the way the community speaks about you, and you've left quite a mark and quite a legacy, and that impact will continue even after you're retired and not working with us anymore. But we appreciate your leadership. We're going to continue carrying it on as best as we can.
Thank you.
Right. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting for this evening. We will meet again on June 6th, 2023. Good night. And thank you so much, Cheryl, and have a wonderful evening to everybody else.